Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Perceptive podcast series here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and the science of games. I'm pulling out my game dev roundtable overlay as we have multiple guests on to talk about their game and their studio. My guests are from Whalestork Interactive, and they have recently, or as of 2024, released the adventure game The Night is Grey. And this has been a very long time coming from the studio, and we have two members coming on to talk a little bit more about it and kind of the challenges of making it. So, I'll give both of you a chance to introduce yourself. So, we'll start with Andre and then go to Tiago. Or Tiago, sorry.
So, so I'm Andre, and I'm the director of The Night is Grey.
I'm Tiago. I'm the writer for The Night is Grey, basically.
It's great to have both of you on, and as I always say, we're always looking for more guests for the Perceptive podcast series. So if you are a developer working on a game or just want to chat game dev, please reach out. So, for both of you, could you talk a little bit more about kind of like your backgrounds, and we'll get into what is the Night is Grey in a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. So I always wanted to make a video game all my life. I was an avid gamer and very focused on story-driven games. I grew up playing the Broken Sword series and the Mist series, and the Day of the Tentacle and the Dig. And I always wanted to make a video game that was focused on story. And over the years, I bothered all my friends to join my cause and to start a project. But every time I started a project, it felt very daunting. So the projects always fell through. But one day, I was working, one day almost 10 years ago or 8, I was working at a design agency, and Tiago was my colleague, and he was the copywriter of the agency. And I pitched him this idea for a game, and he got in the idea. So it started there.
Yeah, sure. Basically, yeah. Andre was like, "Hey, I always wanted to make a game. I kind of have a basic idea of a story plot that I really like, but I don't really know how to make it go further. Uh, what do you think we spend some nights here after hours at work, just drinking some beers and brainstorming and see where we can lead this to go?" And we did that, and then Andre brought in his brother, who is Bruno Broa, to also create some music for us. Pedro, who originally did the character designs. Teresa, who made the animation for the first time. She tried animating stuff, and she did great, we think. And also we had Miguel, who learned to code just for this
Yeah.
game.
So nobody at the team had
Yeah.
had zero experience in making games. So I just have to. Yeah, it was very difficult to engage them for almost 7 years. That they were working almost pro bono because they were working with the prospect or for someday finishing this project. It was very difficult to keep the morale up even after COVID because we were working this after our day jobs for 7 long years. It was very difficult to keep up the momentum, but it ended up being quite a miracle to
It,
just
it, al-
finishing
it
this.
almost it almost did not happen at the
Yeah,
halfway through. Halfway through the game, it almost did not happen. We had like
yeah,
50% of the game done, and then, oh my God, life happened, and it was hard to pull it through, but we managed it
yeah.
somehow.
So we knew that it was going to be point and click because it was a good start for somebody who had no experience making a video game. So it was uh, for it was good for two things, because it was very story focused, very story driven, and point and clicks are very focused on this aspect. and it was quite easy to program. And the gameplay
With
it was
codes,
very
with
tight.
codes there.
Yeah. So we tried our best at that approach, and after the fact that we chose that approach, we focused on making the best experience that we could make. So we focused on the visuals, we focused on the music, and we focused on the story. So after 7 years, Tiago had time to perfect the story, to create the most of the nitpicks of the lore. It was
Yeah, we
quite
went
difficult.
through a lot of changes there. Also, we discovered that we shared a passion with point and click video
Yeah,
games, like in a kind of nostalgic. I was, as a kid, Broken Sword. I was the kind of guy that tried to tried all combinations because I wanted to know just what everyone wrote.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
did they think about doing this? How about this? And I spent, well, I got a lot of mileage out of Broken Sword games and other point and click adventure games. Let's say.
Oh yes, and there's only a lot to talk about in terms of like point click adventure design. I know we have about an hour, but we could easily spend like a few of it just talking about that. So I guess for people listening to us right now, what is the Night is Grey? Like, what's kind of like the elevator pitch for it?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to. I found that it was very difficult to sell our game because it focused
We
so
try to
much on
avoid
the story
spoilers.
that
Right?
pitching the story it's like spoiling it. So it's always very difficult to sell the game uh, because of without spoiling. So we always do the pitch of starting with a character that you don't know where he came from, and he finds himself in the middle of the forest running for something, and he finds a wooden lodge in the middle of the forest where he finds a girl seemingly abandoned there, and he tries to help her to bring the kid to their grandparents, and that's the main premise of the game. But we always focus the story to into very heavy subjects, and I was very glad when I brought Tiago on board because Tiago has a background in psychology, so it was very good to and married very amazingly into the narrative because we had to be very careful with the subjects that we tackled, so and very respectful. So it was a good approach, and so we stick with it with the
Yeah,
story.
it's a very heavy subject. In essence, it's a cinematic thriller in the form of a point and click adventure game. There's mystery. There's a lot of story to unravel, and yeah, it's kind of it's a deep dive into very heavy subjects, um, and we try
Yeah,
to
we could
represent
say
them
it's
as
more a
well as
point and click
possible.
for adults, but it's not like
Sure.
that. It's more, yeah, it may sound bad, but it's not for, but it's more mature. It's like Broken Sword with the dark humor, but less funny and but more focused on the mood, on the thriller side
It's
of
a
it.
very introspective game. Let's say
Yeah,
that.
and it's more thrillery than just yeah the counterparts or competition, as we can call it that.
And with kind of like I've been checking out this game like here and there. I know, as you said, like you've been working on this for about 7 years.
Mhm.
Well, I guess first off, definitely congratulations on getting the game out. As
Thank you.
everyone around here knows, it is a challenge to get a game
Yeah,
shipped. So it's always great
yeah.
when it comes together like that. I guess,
Or even when you have a full-time job. Yeah,
yep, for
yeah.
sure. I guess my first question for both of you is, in terms of, I guess, like developing like the theme and like the design for the Night is Grey, has the game changed at all, like since like the original vision for it, or has it kept like relatively consistent during development?
Yeah, visually it changed. So initially it was my more like a isometric point of view of the
Mm-hmm.
game, but we did some scenes with it, but it felt very disconnected with the player. So because you in an isometric view, you tend to be more distant and see the characters far away. So we opted for a more uh, closer approach with the dynamic camera that closes into the. That's why Tiago is telling it with that we had approach for with cinematic view of it because the camera is dynamic. It focuses on the characters, then goes with a wide shot, then goes to the close up. So we tend to bring up more emotion to the scene and connecting more with the music and the soundscape with this more traditional point and click approach with the gameplay. But it changed, yeah.
Uh,
But in the
Originally,
beginning, it
that was
was
in the first year, I think. That was just the
yeah, it
first
was the
year where
first
we were
year.
developing the story, and then we felt that it wasn't simply wasn't working.
Yeah, it
Didn't
was
work.
more
It was
focused
a good
on
mechanic for
telling a
it.
story on a mobile game, but we opted for a more desktop kind of game and more relaxed. But it was yeah, it was strange to change it at first, but we felt good after changing it. We what other thing that we didn't feel it was very good to change it was the animation drawn by hand. It was not. It wasn't a good change because initially we were trying to opt for traditional traditional animation with
Mm-hmm.
to 24 frames per second. But after making 10 seconds of animation, we opted out because it felt very daunting to animate all those frames. So we scaled down to 12 frames per second. And even with that character, the main character has more than 6,000 frames of animation. Just the main character. So after 7 years, you can imagine how many drawings that we have to make just to animate the whole game. And even the scenes that we made the sketch initially, and then we do a 3D above it, a simple 3D model of the scene, then painting over it, then separating all the layers, then animating all the layers to feel very organic. So doing it for almost 100 scenes and all the characters on all the animations, it was very difficult, yeah, to pull
Yeah,
it
but
off.
we're kind of, I don't want to say naive, but we were very ambitious at the beginning because 12 frames per second is like the industry standard in animation. So
Yeah.
we wanted to go a bit beyond that, and then we found out very quickly, oh, that's why they
Okay.
don't usually go
Yeah,
beyond
yeah. That's why they
that.
don't do it. Yeah, that's why. So we stopped. Yeah, our tracks very quickly. But yeah, but we get the most compliments about the with the game about the visuals. Yeah, the visuals stand out. So we
Mm-hmm.
are very glad about it. It turned out good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as someone like I've played tons of adventure games, and I always like the hand drawn look myself. I think it always gives like that very like unique aesthetic and tone to a game.
Yeah, but it was very difficult in the beginning um, to measure the amount of details that you put in on the characters. Because in the beginning, you are very excited to make a game. You make a scene and you look at it and it looks amazing. Then you have to schedule all the work for everybody and plan all the scenes and plan the key scenes for it. It was then we realized it was very difficult to animate that many animations that we wanted to make at start. So we opted to make the the main ones the most essential ones. Then with the time that we had, with the spare time that we had in the project, we opted to make more and then more embezzlement to the project. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's something as simple as well, if the character spans have lots of details, you're gonna have to animate each detail for each
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah.
So do we really need those, or are they just for show? Or what can we do about the design to make it as more efficient as possible?
Yeah. It came to the point that we were counting buttons to the shirt of the
Sure.
character. Yeah,
Sure.
yes, exactly six buttons. But at first it was 10, but we reduced to
Yeah.
4. Then reduced the lines of the shirt. And we are the pockets essential? Are the pockets only show up when he puts the hand on the pocket? So things like that we didn't know at the start, and we learned with it. We learned in the middle of the process, and it was fun, but not fun at the same time.
Yeah, and that's something I've definitely heard from a lot of indie developers that I've spoken with
Yeah,
over the years. I guess
yeah,
I guess this next question will be for Tiago. In terms of writing, the Night is Grey. Like with the story, as you said, it's more of a cinematic thriller. So how was it like developing like the plot? Again, no spoilers here for anyone watching, but what was kind of it like developing like the story to go alongside the adventure gameplay?
Oh my God. It was very hard because of things that I can't talk about because it's a very specific plot line that proved to be a very big challenge to write. I had lots of calls with Andrea because something was not fitting in, and the character motivation doesn't make sense in this part of the game. So what the hell is going on? And we had lots of headaches in trying to make it work. Um, in other aspects of it, it's very fun, but also very tiring to. You know how I was saying that I was the kind of kid that tried every combination because I was testing the writer. So I also wanted to write every combination possible, and it's very cool and it's very entertaining, and I love writing it, but it's also very tiring. We make jokes nowadays, me and Andre, because we sometimes watch streamers playing the game on uh, on some platforms, um, and we comment, "Damn, I didn't remember that line of text that was there. I don't
yeah. The
think anyone
character
tried
says
that
something,
combination
and
in a year or
we
something."
totally forgot. Did you wrote
Yeah,
that? Yeah, I did.
I totally, I totally forgot about a lot of them, and also because it's a very dark subject. As Andrea was saying, I have a background in psychology. I once was a shrink, not anymore, but I could use a bit of that knowledge to try to make all the environment and the characters a bit more rich and or more as real as possible, since we're in a video game and also we have to serve storytelling, but we try to be as faithful to human interactions, real human interactions as possible. The little child that appears in the video game, Hannah, was also a challenge because we really didn't want to fall into the trope of the annoying child second character that you have to take care of, and they're just a brat. And it's either that or the other cliche, which is a perfect angel child, and it's very hard to write a realistic kid. But we took in for inspiration from our nephews and interactions with them, and I think we did it. I think we also did all right with
Yeah,
that.
and it's fun when we were watching the streams. People initially um, feel that the game it's more natural than usual. It's difficult to express this because people start clicking on stuff and the character says something that the player feels, oh, okay, yeah, a normal person will say that. Or when you start picking stuff up and he said this doesn't need that. And we are trying to break the trope of all the point and clicks where you can grab everything and gather all the items, but it doesn't need it, so it tells it. And normally the players feel that this is kind of strange, but in the end, I think the most positive things that the players told us and watching the streams was how grounded the game feels, in contrast to the other point games, because all the mindsets on the puzzles are very grounded. We avoid all the moon logic possible, and in the beginning, it's like a learning curve about how normal people think, and how to solve the problems in a more normal way. Because people, and even in the point and click genre, they are they are very used to the moon logic, and they think in game logic, not in real life logic. So in the first chapter, when you I'll give you an example. We got two reviewers that mentioned this on their video review, that they found very refreshing, that the character, when you click on the trash, he said that it doesn't need to go to the trash, because there's no
Why would you?
want to
Why
go
would you
there.
go
Yeah,
to the
would
trash?
you?
Right.
What
Mhm.
what do I need to find? So when there's the moment that someone tells you there's something on the trash, then the character can go there and click on it, and the player instantly remembers the trash, and they click on it and they found the item, because they know now what item they should search for. Yeah. But
Yeah,
if it was on another point and click, you clicked on the trash can and you picked up a peel of a banana, and maybe that will be probably for a puzzle. I don't know. Yeah.
the game
Mhm.
And
kind of
why the
makes
character
you.
why the character grabbed the peel of the banana, we don't know.
The game kind of makes you think like its main character, which is Graham, and he's kind of a basic guy and a
Yeah.
very straightforward guy, and it's kind of jarring at first
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
he's also kind of a weirdo, but the game makes you start to think like him a bit. But then players usually like get in the groove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get in the groove. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and speaking about the puzzle design and adventure game logic, that was actually what I was going to ask both of you about next. Like, from my time with the game, and I play it, like, at the time of this recording, I'm in the middle of chapter 2 of it, and part of the challenge, as what you're talking about, again, with adventure game design, is how crazy you want to make the puzzles. Because, again, puzzle logic can go a million different directions. And I guess
Yeah.
part of that, I think, is also the difficulty of a puzzle. Again, like, you can have a puzzle game that's as simple as it's a red door, I have a red key, where's it going to go? Or we can go as far as something like Myst, or,
Yeah.
the entire King's Quest series in terms of
Yeah.
adventure game logic. I guess with developing the actual puzzle design of The Night is Grey, again, you mentioned you were inspired by the likes of Broken Sword, kind of like the 90s golden age era of point and click.
Yeah.
What was kind of like the thought process? Like, again, like, kind of build off what Tiago was talking about, like, what was kind of like the thought process for how you wanted the puzzle logic to grow throughout the game?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I was a
Andre is
very
a puzzle master. Andre is a puzzle
yeah.
master. It's funny that you mentioned Myst because he's a Myst fanboy
Yeah,
through and through.
I'm the biggest Beast fanboy ever. So yeah, I think I'm a designer today because of the Riven game. Yeah. So when I played it as a kid, I just bought the game, or asked my mother to buy the game, just because it had 5 CDs. So I thought it was amazing to have 5 CDs on the game.
Bang for the buck.
Yeah, so I bought it just for having a lot of CDs, and came out amazingly, because it felt very inspiring, and the puzzles got through me over the years, and in a way, I put all those um, kind of vague puzzles into our game and not all the way because it will frustrate the players. So you mentioned the Sierra games where you you had an option or the surprise of dying on the game. So we applied a little bit that too into our game, and but the puzzle philosophy to the game, it was always creating a situation and then a real life situation, then creating a problem to it, and then dividing that problem into two or three smaller problems. And I was always thinking about how do I solve this in the real life without moon logic. So that was kind of a problem because we were creating a game based on true life. So if you have a kitchen, you have lots of items showing up. So if he has something that's stuck on something, you have a plethora of items on the kitchen. So why wouldn't the character grab them all? So I had always to try to hide them or make an excuse for they don't exist in the scene. So I was always, and Tiago was always pointing them up, thankfully, because we had a scene and my problem was doing this. And he always watched the scene and, okay, why doesn't the character grab this and do this? So I was always thinking, oh, goddamn. So I needed to change the scene and remove that object and fill it with something useless. So it was very difficult to manage the ground-based puzzle making into it. But there was one time on the game that we went a little more moon logically because we wanted to also please the players that like that kind of aspect of the game. So we went a little
But
crazy
it's
on one puzzle.
very self-aware. It's kind
Yeah.
of meta, actually. Yeah.
So yeah, but the all other puzzles are very very grounded and all based in reality. So all worked should work in the real world. That was our motto for the puzzles.
Yeah, and again, like with kind of like the challenge of like having puzzles, like kind of like the multiple parts too, and to keep with kind of the example of picking through the trash. There's always that challenge in terms of keeping, or I guess like guiding the player to the solution of a puzzle. So, like as an example, in the like I guess like super mild spoiler, but in chapter 2 you have of course the electrical gate that you have to figure out, okay, how do I get this thing to turn on? And you're given of course the clues in the kind of minor yard or kind of like the where everyone's hanging out. You have the different parts. And this is something I want to ask both of you about in terms of kind of like readability of the environment, because I know for people listening to us, there is an accessibility or kind of approachability feature you can turn on hotspots as kind of an aid. And with kind of like building the environment for the puzzle design itself, what was kind of like, I guess, like the process or your thought process for, okay, how we want to lay these things out so that, okay, maybe there's a handle on a table, maybe there's, oil in this drum. Like, how was it like developing like the scenes of the game in terms of like trying to get like the puzzle logic across to the person?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix because the story is laid out and we created the scenes, the most essential scenes to the story. But the story is divided in chapters, so it was easy for us because we between each chapter we planted each scene with a purpose, and sometimes a puzzle came before the scene, and sometimes we created the scene and then we applied the puzzle into the scene. So we constructed the scene with the puzzle in mind, but sometimes I had the puzzle in my brain storage that I wanted to apply it somewhere. So that helped me integrate and create other scenes in the future where I had to implement the puzzle into it. So it's kind of confusing, but yeah. So sometimes the puzzle came before, and I played on the scene, and sometimes the scene came before the design of the puzzle. But um, it was very organic, and I was always in communication with Tiago because all it's difficult on a point and click because even if it's more puzzle focused, the story has always to blend into the puzzles. So
Yeah, so there's always these two sides. Well, the scenery has to serve the puzzles and has to serve the story. And sometimes the way you tell the story must also help you fix the puzzles. So
yeah,
there's a lot of writings in the game where you find the story, but in between the story, there are some details that let the player solve another thing. So it plays a lot from each other. It was challenging because when we were developing the game, there are some things that we thought in the environment that, well, this is easy, this is basic, everyone will go here and try this and do that. But then we started beta testing, and then we found that people are really different from each other, and
Hmm.
yeah,
some
yeah,
things that we find are super intuitive, then we found that, oh, nobody's clicking on this side of the scenery. Why? We need them to click there. So what we need to
yeah,
do to overcompensate this also happens with the puzzles. The same puzzle is the most hated and the most loved depending on the player, and
yeah,
we can't figure it out. We just can't
yeah,
figure that out.
yeah. So what Tiago is saying, it's sometimes on the scenes we had to change the scene to highlight this zone or make the items more pop up with color and gamers and the developers always and even today talk about the yellow paint. So we kind of did that yellow paint technique on our game, but more with colors because the game it's at night it's very bluish, so everything of color always stand out. So if you use more greenish or more red, it always pops out to the player and directs the player to the puzzles or to the scene. Even we made on purpose to make the Anna's dress red, just to pop always the scene to brighten up the scene. And Graham always in blending
The
too
yellow
much with the
pants,
scene.
the
Yeah,
yellow pants stand out.
yeah. So the main character bleeds in into the scene and to the story, but the Anna always stands out with the bright colors. So it's always trying to yeah to invoke the player to interact with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and to the to what you were saying about like people will like either completely solve puzzles or completely miss it. Like that is always like a challenge for any one of these games. I just did a podcast chat with another developers working on kind of like a tactical strategy game, and they were talking about everyone learns differently. So you'll have someone who will
Yeah, yeah,
grasp something immediately, and someone who will never solve this puzzle no matter how many hits or walkthroughs you give them.
Yeah,
yeah.
brains
It's very
work
difficult
very,
to
very differently.
yeah. It's very difficult to please everyone as always, but yeah, it's kind of weird that there are puzzles that people really love it, and the puzzles that people try to they hate it because it's difficult. In the beginning, it was very difficult because we naively thought that all players were accustomed to point and clicks, but we learned very fast that not everyone played a point and click in their life. So the simple act of combining an object on the or finding the inventory on the top bar, players didn't knew that. So it was always a learning curve. So we kept in the beginning we were very naive to we wouldn't do any tutorials in the beginning of the game. We wouldn't point out anything because everybody knows about this kind of game. So it would look very cinematic and cool if you don't have any pointers at all. But in the beginning we started to realize that we had to put more tutorials and more tutorials because we have to reach to everybody, and not everybody plays adventure games. So now it's more and more accessible, and we made an update a few weeks ago where we implemented more tutorials to reach to as many people as possible. Yeah.
Even when after we launched the demo, we learned, and it was a tragic learning. But when we thankfully we got before completing the game, is that lots of people don't know the value of right clicking on something,
Yeah.
on a point and click adventure game. So we had some key actions that relied a bit on people finding more about an item, or about something by right clicking it. And then we found out from people that are not experienced doing it, they can not right click a single time during the whole game. So
Yeah.
you have to either redesign the game so it doesn't rely on right click, or in some points kind of remind the player that, hey, you can right
Yeah.
click to get more information.
So we reprogrammed almost all the games so you can play with one button, basically. So, but yeah, as Tiago is saying, it was very organic to change all the design wise of the game. Yeah, it was quite a learning curve for us also.
Yep. And again, like it's one of those challenges I think of developing like a point and click adventure game for like today's audience as well, because we've seen so much how kind of, and this is something I've been speaking with a lot of adventure game designers over like the past 10 years, how like the market has really I think shrunk in terms of like having a broader appeal. I've interviewed developers like Dave Gilbert from Wadget Eye, and like the
Mhm.
Wadget Eye games are probably some of the more like recognized like point and click adventure games, at least for modern audiences. And even they, I think, tend to struggle to bring in new people. And
Yeah.
it is, I think, very challenging. I guess as another question for both of you, as we said, like the Nice Gray has been in development for 7 years, and again, like game dev, that's you might as well say it's like 80 years in terms of how things have changed. Besides, I guess, like looking at like how information is shown to the player, like anything else, like kind of like went through different changes, like as like the market. Like, have you noticed like has the market changed that require you to make any changes with the Nice Gray?
Um, I don't think so. Um, the only thing that changed was our approach to marketing because we had none. We had a zero budget on this project, but we learned from the beginning that we had to market the game as the best we could. So Tiago did an amazing job of bothering everyone on the internet to try
Everyone.
to sell our game.
Check your spam email. You probably have been contacted by
Yeah, an email from us.
whoever
Yeah.
you are.
So we it's always the advice that you see on the social media, and it's always the advice that all the devs say to other devs that market your game since the beginning and marketing hard. You were saying about the Wadget Eye games. They tend to have a little bit more success because they heavily market those games to hell. So that's why uh, they tend to be more successful. But they because they do an amazing job marketing the games. Yeah.
Also, they
For
already
us,
have a reliable fan base, right?
yeah,
That lasts
yeah,
years
they
and
build
years.
up over the years, and for us that we are not known for anybody. It's always art because when you show up to our game to someone and they says, "Oh, we read on the internet, oh, this game looks amazing. Why didn't I learn about this? I didn't heard of anything about this game because you because we don't have the marketing
Mhm.
tools as a double A or we are not
And
even an A developer. We
and
are very
how many indie games are launched every week? There's a
yeah
lot of. It's very hard to just
yeah
punch through that wall and be
yeah.
noticed.
And gamers these days have a very big problem with the backlogging. So,
Mhm.
how much do you spend time on a game? We had reviewers asking us how much you need to spend to finish our game. So they put me on in a difficult position, because if I tell them that you can finish it very quickly to entice them to play the game, they may think it's okay, so you pay $15 and it's only 3 hours. Or if I say more truthfully and say that the game can last to 10 to 12, depending how good you are in the puzzles, and they will say immediately, oh, but I don't have 12 hours to play. I have 100 games to review. And so it's very difficult to market our game, or even tell the reviewers that they may have time to play our game, because they are backlogging. And on the market, even on Steam, it's very difficult to as Tiago is saying, to plow through into the indie scene, because if you have Uncharted 4 with high-end graphics at $15, and you have your totally new indie game at $15, the people tend to choose the more.
Yeah, but it's also beyond that. If you're a streamer and then you're going to stream a game that, even if you like the genre and it looks
Yeah.
pretty good, are you going to stream it without checking a walkthrough, for example? Because that means that you might get stuck for a lot of hours and you have an audience to watch. And so it's
Yeah.
not it's kind of
And that reduces the excitement. Yeah.
and the exposure, because now game developers rely a lot on players for and live stream players for the exposure. But our kind of game is not. We have great streamers, great people, but the kind of game is not very appealing for that crowd, because, well, how do I capture the attention of
Yeah.
my followers for so long? And then there's a lot of talk about, well, point of clicks are kind of an outdated genre. Well, it depends on the type of point and click
Yeah.
game. We can consider Five Nights at Freddy's a point and click game, right? Technically, it kind of follows some
Yeah.
rules of old point and click games. And so yeah, it works and people love it and it's very popular and lots of streamers are constantly playing it. It's a point and click game. It just caters to a kind of medium that's classical point and click adventure games like Sierra don't market to
Yeah.
them or don't
Because
adapt to them as well.
in the middle of the stream, if there's no action or nothing is happening, because the players is simply thinking about the puzzle and how to solve it, and even if he is thinking out loud the challenge of the puzzle, that may seem very boring for the streamer and for his audience. So as Tiago is saying, it's kind of hard to sell a point and click that is very story focused. And if you do the puzzles very easy, they will find there's no challenge in it. If you do the puzzles very hard, for the people that are not on a stream and just playing at home and want a hard challenge, there are those in our game, but it's very difficult to have a balance to please everyone. But as Tiago is
There, there,
saying, yeah,
there are people that try to solve our game, and it's very. It was strange at first because we realized that a lot of people won't even think of having a pen and paper with them when
yeah,
solving a puzzle video game. They don't even think that's necessary because most game nowadays the puzzles avoid that, I guess, or don't rely a lot of on that. And then oh gosh, okay, we're talking to a very different kind of crowd and a different kind of mindset, I guess.
Yep. And like what you were saying about like kind of like streaming adventure games, like that's definitely something that I've noticed as well. It's hard to make a very story-driven game be very exciting to an audience, especially if you're stuck on a puzzle. And like there are like YouTubers and streamers who just dedicate themselves solely to the adventure game genre, is like that kind of particular niche. But I think
Thank
that's
God.
part. What was that?
Thank God.
Yeah. but
God, yeah,
but I think it's still very hard to kind of again like breach that mainstream bubble. You mentioned, of course, Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that was kind of like one of like the best examples of like streamer or like YouTuber interaction for a game. Because it is about, how's a person playing going to respond? So you get that excitement to it. Whereas for a lot of point and click adventure games, it's really just about kind of like everyone going quiet and going, okay, how are we solving this puzzle? And of course, if you get stuck on a puzzle, 9 times out of 10, the audience is not going to help you. They'll probably be stuck on it as well.
Yeah, so we did some kind of approach to the excitement aspect of it. That's why we start the game with some the main character running out of the woods. So we wanted to start with a blast, but we always thought about excitement moments in the game, but excitement moments always tend to involve animation. So we did our best and we scaled down a little bit. So we played with more with sound. That's why my brother came in with the soundscape. So we played a lot with compensation with the music, where the music starts, where the music where there's the use of no sound or the silence, where people will miss that the music isn't playing, or the music it's organic and changes depending on the scene, if the characters are near danger or talking to Anna. So we try to compensate that with the and dropping, of course, some story bits that try to pull the player
Like
to
the
the
player
mystery.
too.
Yeah. And we tried. I talked with Tiago for years about this. So when we were playtesting the game, and if you had almost half an hour or 20 minutes without some little crumb of story or thrilling scene, we had to try to manage the story and give the player a little bit more and a little bit more. So that was our approach to it.
Yeah, that's also the advantage and why we put so much into making the game as beautiful as possible. When if every scenery
Yeah,
is like a painting, and if we plant here or there some special animations with some actions, well, that also helps the player in like, oh, this is worth my time because
yeah. This
it seems
is
like with so many, well, it's a cliche to say that people nowadays don't have that much of a attention span, or we're a lot of busy. But the truth is, there are a lot of games coming out and a lot of good games, and we don't have infinite money or infinite time. So yeah, we have to make the game as worthwhile of your time as possible.
yeah. It feels good when we are watching the streams and the player uh, tells that the scene is beautiful many times throughout the game. So they keep getting odd about the scene multiple times during the game. So it's not something from the beginning they see the art style and think, okay, this is beautiful, but they forget about it. No, they throughout the story when they change the scene, they always say, man, this game looks really beautiful. And so every time the player says that on a stream, we get very
Yeah, it's like
glad about it. Yeah.
progressing to see a new set is like its own reward a bit.
Yeah. That's what our mindset to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is certainly a lot that we can discuss. And again, we're trying to keep us to about an hour for the recording. So I'm trying to think if there's any other major questions. So I guess first of all, I guess for both of you, any other points about the Nias Grave in terms of its design, the story, the puzzles that we didn't touch on that either you would like to bring up to the audience?
I think
Uh,
we
yeah,
approached the
well,
music.
about the subject at hand, we haven't really talked a bit about it. When we said that the game is about heavy subject, there's a lot of there's a lot of introspection about trauma, mainly generational trauma, about some societal issues that aggravate those traumas, and also it tries to touch on some. Although the game is not set in present times, it kind of deals a lot with issues that we are dealing with on present times. And I think we always try to be very, very respectful of people's intelligence and not try to just put it out there that this is what's going on, this is what you should feel, this is what you should think about this. Just leave it for people to assume their own resolutions for the issues we're talking about. And that proved to be a very uh, that was what made the game a love it or hate it kind of game in that way, because some people really enjoy the way we did it, and some other people either really don't enjoy the approach we had, or don't, in some cases, we believe understand kind of what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah, we had players that thought that the game was about something else, but it was about something else. So yeah, but it feels very good, even to this day, to receive emails or people trying to reach us on social media, saying to us that they played and finished the game for 1 week ago, and they are still thinking about the ending, and they are thinking about how to feel about it. And that was our main goal of telling a story. And it all started 8 or 9 years ago when I talked to Tiago about this pitch. To come to full circle to our beginning of the conversation, um, we we thrive to create a story that it was uh, very
Different from what
questionable.
we've seen in video games, also, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mhm.
So to let all the players and the people thinking about it after they finishing the game feels very good to us. And it was our goal from the beginning. From the beginning, so it felt very good, and it feels very good even today. Yeah.
Mhm. And naturally, it brings up another question I have for both of you in terms of kind of like it's like plotting out like the pacing of the Night is Grey, like how long you want to make the game, what you want to put into it. When I talk to a lot of developers, especially those who do like story-driven games, there's always that focus of, do we think about things from the storytelling perspective first? Like, do we set this game up in terms of how we want the plot to be, and then kind of fill
Mhm.
in the cracks of the gameplay? Or do we do things from a gameplay point of view? We think about the puzzles, we think about the mechanics, and then we kind of fit the story around that. For both of you with The Night is Grey, like, did you have like an approach for that in terms of thinking about the game from a gameplay point of view first, or for trying to tell the story first?
Yeah,
I
we
think
we
it's
went
kind
with
of
the
a
story.
mix, but
Yeah, but we went with the story first,
Mhm.
and I think we always thought that there were going to be a moment that we had to make more padding into the project and add more puzzles or add something else to keep to stretch up the length of the game. But we never reached that point. We built the game. Uh, as we said, the game is divided in chapters. So we did the first chapter, and the average player tend to finish the in 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. So we thought, okay, if this is the average time for this chapter, we multiply that for the other ones, and we had the basic vision or premonition of all the length of the game, and it ended up being quite accurate. So we didn't have to cut story to it or add story into the project or even add puzzles into it. So we were very fortunate and very lucky not to waste. It's not the correct wording, but to waste time into adding more stuff or cutting things from the project. So the story was always first, yeah.
There were some times where we needed to give a tweak a bit either to the story or to the dialogue to make something in the scenery that was necessary for a puzzle to make sense, and that's when it came a bit backwards there, but it was always like to fit into the sequence of actions that you needed to do to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess with figuring out, I guess, the overall pacing for the Night is Grey with the story and the puzzle design, in terms of length, like again, like this is something that, to go back to what we were saying a few minutes ago regarding like streamers and people covering games, that's always a tricky part about a venture game. You'll have someone again who they'll solve every puzzle immediately. They will grasp it all. They'll get through your game speedrun style, and then you'll have someone who will take like additional 5 to 10 hours as they get stuck on every single puzzle. With, I guess, coming up with the overall, as you said, you thought about, but you thought about things from the story episodes at first, so you kind of knew where you wanted these to go from beginning to end, and then building the gameplay around that. With the overall length of the Night is Grey, like, what was it? What was the any interesting challenges or any thoughts on, I guess, like how many puzzles you want to have in a game like this, and compared to like the story? Because that, I think, is another challenge of adventure game design. This idea of, there'll be people who play an adventure game again for that Moon Logic, Broken Sword, King's Quest level of puzzles, and then you have people who they want the mystery, they want that story. So what was it like? I guess like trying to balance those two with the Night is Grey.
It was with a lot of humility as well, because we always heard the feedback of players, and we tried to make adjustments to make the pacing better and as good as possible. Because when we are beta testing, we had limited resources to do it. We don't have 100 people or 200 people to play and give us feedback. But after launching the game, we did some tweaks to perfect that balance as much as possible.
Yeah. There were two things that we tried to avoid from the design wise. So one thing it was to cut down the world map that point and clicks tend to have. So you unlock locations, and when the game starts to get bigger and bigger, people tend to wander off and um, start to be very unfocused on the objective, because if you have the castle and the beach and the lodge, so you start traveling to all those scenes, and you lose purpose on the focus of the puzzles. So we ditched that, and we, as we said, we separated in chapters, which was a good choice, because as you were talking about the streamers and the VTubers, when they
Yep.
do the game, they tend to divide the game as the chapters go. So they do the one chapter, that's one video, and in the streamers they do 1, 2, and then 3 chapters. They tend to stop there and do the other chapters on the next stream. So to them, it's good to stop the story at and key points. So we segmented the game, and it was good design wise for the as a selling point for the social media and for the YouTubers and the streamers. The other thing that we tried
Totally accidental. It was a
yeah,
narrative
totally
thing.
accidental, yeah, but it tend to be, yeah. The other thing that we tried to avoid in point and click uh, tropes was the main character gathering as much objects as he could. So even if you had a collection and a plethora of items that you will never use to the end of the game, that causes very big frustration to the player, because they are holding to a clay jar till the end of the game that they will never use. So they start using the clay jar on everything because something will happen with it. So we always that was a challenge to Tiago to always write an excuse for Graham to ditch that object with the reasonable logic to it. So the Graham always says, "Okay, don't have any use for this because it will be more weight on my pockets. So I'll just drop this here, and I will never use this. Or I just broke this; it will be totally unuseful for me." So he only keeps the objects that can progress the puzzles. So keeping those as little as um, 3 or 5 objects always in the inventory limits the imagination of the players, keeping them grounded on the puzzles. So that was very. We applied them that from the beginning, right? I think so.
Yeah,
Always from the
we had to
yeah,
because we didn't want people to have infinite possibilities, and
yeah,
we had to be really careful what character had on his pockets from one chapter to the next, because it was very important for us to keep it as balanced as possible.
yeah. There are even situations that he stores the items from the previous chapters on the next scene. So he purposely leaves them there, and the player can see the character leaving on the scene. So they don't only magically disappear. They place the items on the scene, so
Yeah,
it doesn't use them.
at the ending point, the justification is starting to be, well, I'll just leave it here for now. Hope I don't forget it, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, hope I don't forget it, and then he forgets it.
yeah.
So you don't have that object anymore.
And there is a line of text that we wrote as a failsafe for the players that keep trying to combine things that are ridiculous. And Graham says there's no point on combining something with something until something happens. That's poking fun to that trope of using everything on everything. So trying to mix up. Oh, I'm gonna just try to mix it up until something happens. So yeah, and we are poking
Yeah,
fun
so
at it.
puzzles are frustrating enough. We try to take everything else that would waste your time, basically.
Yeah. For an example, that you play the first chapter, when he tried to, when you know that you have to find something to write on the notepad. If you click on the broom, you start thinking about in moon logic. If I pick up the broom and break it, and if I burn it, I'll write it with the ashes. So that will be very game logic. If you are in real life, you would ask the person that lives on the house, "Hey, do you have something to write about?" And she'll tell you she has a crayon. So that sets it's like a tutorial to the way of thinking of the game. Yeah.
I did actually have that thought in my head. That was where my logic
Yeah.
was going for that puzzle right there.
And on stream, it's always funny
Um,
because yeah, it's a good idea. And the Gram mocks the idea, and they immediately notice that it's the devs sending a
yeah,
message.
it's very funny because some people kind of act a bit insulted by it.
Yeah,
Tipo,
yeah,
why are you calling me out, game? What the hell are you doing? But it's
yeah,
because we've been there, and we know that
yeah,
at some frustration points you're like, oh, I don't know, I'll just use this bucket to as a weight to, I don't know, do something, create a machine of some kind, and we don't need in our game we you don't need to think that abstractly.
yeah. It's funny because Moon Logic, like in the Monkey Island games, they fit the theme, but here the Moon Logic would not fit the theme. I always remember the puzzle on the Curse of Monkey Island that you had to uh, make a balloon with gum and put the golden tooth in your mouth. So with helium, you make a balloon and will float over the window. It was very crazy always. So we trying to tone down all the puzzles in becoming as grounded as we could.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. As I think we are like knocking on time at the moment, but yeah, definitely a lot to go over with the Night is Gray, and I again like that's exactly I love everyone thought of the same exact thing for that one puzzle.
Yeah.
I guess before we kind of get into like our final wrap for the podcast, any other points about the design, the development, or the story of the Night is Gray that either one of you want to bring up?
I think we reached everything.
Yeah, I think we
It
covered.
was Yeah, it was very challenging from the beginning. I always say that uh, for me it was uh, very rewarding after many years of trying to finish a project and finally finishing a project and seeing streamers play your creation. It feels very good. So always end your projects, even they are people say bad things about it or good things about it. At least they are finished. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah,
was.
from my side, as a we've commented this that this is kind of like the only art form where the creator can watch the
Yeah, yeah,
reaction of the art consumer live and see the emotions going through them,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's a very we had no idea how fantastic that feeling was. Like when we write something or make a gag that makes people laugh or something
yeah,
that make them feel something, it's like you watch it live and it's very weird. It's very weird, but
yeah.
it's very rewarding as well.
It's a next step to nowadays. It's very common to see people to react to old movies on the internet. And in the movie they are not interacting with your product. With the book they are reading, and if you can't expectate someone reading your book,
Yeah.
it may sound very weird, but with the video game, you see all this smash up together. So the people are watching, they are listening, they are interacting with your product, they are thinking out loud. It's as Tiago is saying, it's very weird, and it was very weird in the beginning to get into the mind of the players as they play it, as they are discovering, and as they are struggling with your puzzles. And you see players struggling a lot with one specific puzzle. And the other day, I was watching a player that she was very good at it. She has a lot of experience in point and
Yeah,
click
yeah, yeah.
games. I was almost crying because she was getting everything very fast and the puzzle solving it very fast. Then for one small thing, she broke into a halt because she couldn't find one piece. And in all the let's plays and all the streams, everybody found out about that piece as fast as they could. But she spent all the time that she sped up on the gameplay just trying to find that. So it's always an expecting to every play is different. Yeah, every
Yeah,
play is different.
it's also weird because the character is also kind of beloved or hated. Some people really enjoy the character and think he's funny, and then other people seem to just like tolerate him a bit. And it's like I don't really get what this guy is doing, but let's see where this goes. And it's weird to see so many different reactions to the different beats that the game has.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I guess as like one final question for both of you before we wrap things up,
Mhm.
because my audience includes a lot of students and a lot of developers as well. Any like insights or any like tips you can give like anyone watching in terms of any struggles or lessons learned about making a point and click and adventure game?
Yeah, so marketing is king. Market your game as soon as you can. Every problem that you have in learning everything is on the internet and for free. So we when our programmer Miguel that he learned to program just for this game. He didn't know anything, so he learned from internet videos. So he went to YouTube, searched this problem and this specific problem, and there's always an answer for every problem that you have during development. You just have to be very patient, and if you don't fix it at first, you try to work around it. But if you can't do your ideal idea at first, try to go around it and make something else. But try to finish your projects. That's how I try to always advise to any developer and any, and don't go big and like we did, because everybody always in our reviews they always ask us that this is your first game. No, it can't be this big, this looking as good as this, but it was. So we tried to make it as big as possible because we thought that this could be our only project and our only video game that we made in our life. So we poured everything into it. But this is, I think it's a mistake. Always do smaller projects and finish the small projects, and don't go full big.
So, to wrap things up for the cast. So, again, for people listening to us right now, The Night is Grey is, of course, currently available on PC, Steam. Is it available on any other platforms?
On Mac, iOS, and that's it for now. Yeah.
Okay. And my favorite question I love to ask developers: do you have any thoughts or plans for what you may be working on next?
Well, we can disclose that, but we are working on something or some things, maybe. But time will tell, because we are waiting upon to see how it goes. So how the sales go, how our lives go. Tiago is having a baby like next month, so
Yeah. So it's gonna be a bit more challenging.
going to be even harder because he's going to have a
Yeah.
job and a baby. But we are
Well, I
trying
hope so.
to,
I hope I'd have a job and a baby.
yeah. So we are trying to go smaller this time and try to work on a new project or multiple projects. Time will see. Yeah, we'll try. If this is only game, we are happy about it.
All right.
For sure.
There's one question I wanted to ask. I think this may be too long, but regarding the hand-drawn animation for The Night is Grey, any tips or I guess research information that you use or you looked up in terms of getting the look for the game, for anyone watching us who's interested in that particular style?
Yeah. So we went to the Don Bluth and type of animation, so old school Disney style. But we, on contrary that people think, they always, when they see good animation, they tend to think it's rotoscoped. So we had a lot of people trying to reach us on social media and saying, "Oh, looks good." So it's rotoscoped, right? So we had to always tell them that it's not rotoscoped, because they are all animated by hand, and we only did some video references of how the body moves, on how the body pick up something or turns around, so we get the feeling on how the character is in a 3D space. But that's it. After that, it's all Teresa's magic, because she never animated anything in her life, and did an amazing job, because everyone tells that the animation is great, and it came through. But
Even the body proportions are exaggerated, so they're
yeah,
not to a human scale. We found out that, for example, the hands
yeah,
looked better if they were a bit bigger, because you could
yeah,
see the actions that he's taking. So they're a bit
yeah,
larger. I think also the head is a bit
yeah.
larger as
Because
well,
when Graham
proportionally.
crouches to pick up an item, if we did initially the animation where he grabs the item, but if you if we did with the right proportions, you'll know the player won't get focused on that motion particularly. So we made the hands, I think, like 30% bigger, so the eyes go to the end motion. So tricks like that we learned from the beginning. As we said, reducing the buttons, reducing the lines, that everything came down to cutting corners. But cutting corners doesn't mean looking bad or looking rough. Just need to think about the project in the long game. So you have to do this, and you do a calculation if you are doing how much drawings for this scene. If you have these many scenes, how much longer will it take? So we did a prospect for finish the game in 2 years. We ended up in 7. That's a big problem. So that's why I
Well,
always keep the
yeah,
projects small.
you can cut some corners, but if you put lots of love and care
Yeah,
into it, people will also excuse some of your failings. And look, if you can do your best with it, someone will love it.
yeah. In the indie game scene, they always
Yeah.
it's a good crowd. Yeah, it's always a good crowd.
All right. And again, like, there's still so much to talk about, and yep, if you guys are interested in the future, we can always have a follow up discussion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, call us. I'm always up to talking about video games. It's always feels good to
Me
me.
too. So I guess before we kind of end the video with like social media and plugs and stuff like that, any final thoughts? Shout out to the fans. Anything to end the cast on from either one of you?
Okay. Yeah, we had amazing support from the fans, and the indie game scene and the adventure game scene in particular. It's a very heartwarming. They are very supportive. If you are making a genre, or you were telling about you talking about the develop making a strategy game, right? Um, if regardless of the genre that you are making, reach for the other developers that are developing on the same genre. They are always eager to tell you or giving you tips. So reach them.
And don't do the same mistakes I did. Lots of people are very, very, very kind and open to helping you out. Sometimes, well, we don't always have time for each other, but in the community, in our community at least, a lot of people made time for us to help us out. So
Yeah,
that's
and for everyone that supported us and shared our game and retweeted and asked
and
us for
also
interviews like yourself
uh,
and streamed our game. We are very honored to be here and for any invitation that we get to talk about our little game.
also thanks to our life partners and friends that got to uh, not have us present for a lot
Yeah.
of nights and other stuff. We had a lot of support for
Yeah.
us to be able to accomplish this.
All right. So, with that, again, we can certainly chat about venture games for hours on end, but I know you two have to get going. So, in terms of social media, Twitter, X, Facebook, whatever, if you have any you'd like to promote, feel free to say it.
Yeah, so you can find us on X or Twitter. On the Discord, you are always welcome. We are now on Blue Sky also, as everyone is trying to jump boats. So we
Yeah,
are
just search
there.
for search for Whalestork and
Yeah,
you'll find us on those
and
platforms.
if you go to wheelstark.com, you'll find all the links and everything that you need to reach us. So we are always there, and we are very eager to talk with everyone that played our game or want to play our game. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, with that, we will wrap things up for our chat. So, Andre, Tiago, thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the release
Thank you,
of
Justin.
the game. Yep. And if you like to come back on for a future chat or to reveal whatever you're working on next, provided after Tiago's baby next month, we can certainly have a chat there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Invite us. We are always eager to come back.
I'll teach the kid to code as soon as possible. Like,
That's the intent for any game dev watching. There's our final suggestion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
All right.
Child work. Make your child work for you.
All right, there's our final point for our chat. But, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure hanging with you this afternoon. So, for people watching, be sure to check out the Night is Gray. I'll include a link to all the social media stuff down below. And I hope you enjoy the little footage I have in our little picture-in-picture as well for the recorded chat. You'll find links to all my stuff as well. Do the YouTubing stuff. Check out all my books. I'm on Blue Sky. Still meandering around on Twitter. Hopefully by the time this recording goes up. And as one final reminder, again, if you are a developer working on a game and like to come on and chat about it, I'm always looking for guests. So do not hesitate to get in touch with me. So again, Andre, Tiago, thank you for coming on. And I hope things will go well for both of you.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah.
All right. So, for those of you watching, we're ending things here. So, come back for the discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games. Until our next chat, have a great night.